Kolegice zbornice so me naprosile, da bi naslovu nesreče pri delu sodna praksa dala nek bolj prijazen pridih, da bi bilo bolj zanimivo. Ampak pravo pa nesreče pri delu, to ne more biti nič prijaznega. To je že po svoji naravi nekako, kaj se vem, resno zadrgnjeno, ne? In ga ne kaže poenostavljati. Jaz sem pravnica, jaz se vam kar upravičujem naprej, morda bom malo preveč pravniška, čeprav bom poskušala vse te primere, skozi katere predstavljam, kaj se dogaja pravzaprav v vseh sodnih postopkih z nekim dogodkom, v katerem sta udeležena delavec in delodajalec, nekako prevesti tudi na mala podjetja. Žal mi je, nimamo analize, kaj se pravzaprav na tem polju dogaja z mikro in malimi podjetji. Nimamo podatka o tem, koliko je teh zadev obravnavanih pred sodišči, še najmanj pa imamo podatek, koliko denarja je šlo, kar ni nepomemben podatek tudi za slovenski prostor. Ampak pojmo od začetka pravzaprav. Začetek pravi tako, da pravzaprav delavec skladno z definicijo o delovnem razmerju opravlja delo po navodilih in pod nadzorom delodajalca. To se pravi, da gre za neko organizirano delo, v katero je vključen nadzor delodajalca, on izdaja organizacijska navodila in za vsa ta sklop je odgovoren delodajalec. Ampak ni delodajalec edini, ki odgovarja za varno in zdravo delo. Zato odgovarjata dva. Delavec in delodajalec, in to dostikrat pozabljamo. In prezremo tako aspekt delavca, kakor aspekt delodajalca. Jaz sem, ko sem nepoznavajoč orodja OIRO, pred dvema dnevoma si odprla spletno stvar Ministrstva za delo, bila navdušena. Resnično bila navdušena, ker sem videla, da pravzaprav je to zelo prijazen način, kako tudi tiste male delodajalce, ki se s tem ne ukvarjajo dnevno, opozarja in opominja, na kaj naj bodo pozorni, o čem naj razmislijo in premislijo in kako naj ravnajo. To se mi zdi izjemno pomembno, saj skozi spremljanje sodne prakse, nezgod pri delu ugotavljam, da pravzaprav je zelo, zelo veliko primerov takih, ko teh razmislekov ni bi bilo, pa bi morali biti. Ne? Če vemo, če izhajamo iz tega, da pravzaprav, ko govorimo o varnosti in zdravju pri delu, govorimo o nekem preprečevanju nekih neljubih dogodkov, o odpravljanju možnosti za te dogodke, o obvladovanju tveganj, o obveščanju in usposabljanju in ne nazadnje o ustrezni organiziranosti delovnega procesa in potrebnim materialnim sredstvom, potem seveda se lahko takoj zapeljemo nazaj v Zakon o delovnih razmerjih, ki pravi, da če delavec utrpi škodo, pri delu ali v zvezi z delom zanjo odgovarja delodajalec. Ampak ta zakon tudi pravi, tega nisem prepisala, ker bi me sindikalisti preveč za ušesa vlekli, ker moram biti vedno bolj sindikalno pravijo usmerjena. Zakon pravi, če delavec delodajalcu povzroči škodo, tudi odgovarja po načelih civilnega prava, torej sta izenačena. Kaj pa je podlaga za to odgovornost? To se pravi, podlaga za odgovornost je povzročitev neke škode, neki dogodek, zaradi katerega nekdo utrpi nekaj na premoženju, zdravju, delodajalec na svojem premoženju, dobičku, delavec na zdravju. To se pravi, da imamo pravno podlago v škodi, torej v povzročeni škodi, o kateri govori tudi sodba Vrhovnega sodišča, ko pravi, da je tožena stranka kljub tožnikovemu klicu zagotoviti pomoč pri premiku, pri premiku kopirnega stroja. To je šlo v nekem skladišču, se je dogajalo, ki ga je bilo treba premakniti zaradi nove dobave blaga, se na ta klic tožnika ni odzvala. Tožnik je to delo opravil sam, brez ustrezne pomoči, čeprav je bil stroj, je tehtal 500 kg. Premaknil ga je nerodno, premaknil ga je tako, da je zdrsnil, ta zdrs je poskušal preprečiti in pri tem je utrpel nezgodo, torej poškodoval se je. Ne? Kaj se je zdaj, v čem se je pravzaprav sodišče ukvarjalo? Sodišče se je ukvarjalo s tem, da delodajalec kljub pozivu delavca, da mu mora zagotoviti varno delo, torej mu mora zagotoviti pomoč pri premiku stroja, najmanj to, tega ni storil, se ni odzval na poziv delavca. Sodišče se je tudi ukvarjalo z vprašanjem, delavec je pa to storil sam. Kaj, ali bi to delavec lahko zavrnil? V končni fazi bi delavec lahko zavrnil, vendar je sodišče reklo, ne, delodajalec se ni odzval. To je bistveno huje kot to, da je bil delavec lojalen, predan delodajalcu in je to delal pravo. In ta delodajalec je v celoti odgovarjal za škodo, ki jo je delavec utrpel. Ne? In zdaj, kakšna je bila ta škoda? Žal mi je, pa če bi vedela, da bomo šli v to smer, bi si pa še to spisvala, da bi vam povedala, da pravzaprav so take neumnosti najdražje neumnosti na tem svetu.
A mislite, odškodnina kakšna?
Odškodnina, tako je. Kaj je delavec iz tega naslova? Pa ne samo odškodnina, ki jo je utrpel delavec, škoda, ki jo je utrpel delodajalec, ta delavec ni delal, tega delavca je bilo treba nadomestiti, delo ni bilo upravljeno, kakorkoli, torej tle so več vidikov. Ne? Seveda bi bil delodajalec razrešen odgovornosti, če bi bila podana krivda tistega, ki je bil oškodovan. Kaj pa je zdaj to krivda tistega, ki je bil oškodovan? To se pravi, če bi delavec nekaj naredil torej naklepno, namerno, da bi povzročil to škodo, ali pa iz malomarnosti. Zavedal bi se, da lahko pride do nekega nezgodnega dogodka, pa bi nepremišljeno menil, da do tega ne bo prišlo in bi se potem seveda polotil nekega dejanja, nekega dela, pri katerem bi utrpel škodo. Tudi tukaj imam sodbo višjega sodišča, ki jo pa lahko razpnem kar tudi v pekarno, pa tudi v mesnico in tudi v trgovino. Za mokra tla gre. Povsod se tla pomivajo. Ne? Če so tla mokra, vemo vsi, da morajo biti označene. Pozor, tla drsijo, mokra tla, pazi previdno. Ta delavka, ki je bila napotena delavka, to je še en poseben, specifičen slovenski primer, ker pri nas imamo veliko outsourcanih delavcev, ne? Torej, čistilka je pri delodajalcu preko nekega servisa upravljala to storitev. Njena kolegica prej je hodnik oprala. Hodnik je bil moker. Delavke so se na tem hodniku zbrale, da bi jih delodajalec odpeljal nazaj na izhodišče, torej na delovno mesto, na kraj, na katerem se ponavadi dobivajo. Hodnik je bil moker, delavka je videla, da je hodnik moker. Ne? Torej, to ji ni bilo neznano dejstvo in je hodila, seveda kot je hodila, zvila si je nogo in je padla, utrpela je nesrečo. Sodišče prve stopnje je reklo, ker je reklo, nisi bil pozoren, nisi dal označbe, da gre za mokra tla, pa je delavka videla, da je mokro po tleh. Pa je dosodilo kljub temu 100% odškodnino oziroma odškodnino delavki brez njene udeležbe. Pa je to je potrdilo tudi višje sodišče. Vrhovno sodišče je pa reklo drugače. Je pa reklo, vendarle je treba to objektivizirati in subjektivizirati to škodo. Mokra tla sama po sebi niso nevarnost. Ne? Ni nujno, da so nevarnost. Treba je ugotoviti, ali je res bil delodajalec kriv ob tem, da je delavka nesporno vedela, da so mokra tla. In je celo zadevo vrnilo sicer sodišču prve stopnje v ponovno odločanje. To, kar zakaj sem jo pa ven potegnila sem jo zato ven, ker vam želim povedati, da sodišče dostikrat odloča znotraj navedb ene ali druge stranke. In delodajalec se v tem primeru ni zagovarjal, da je delavka videla mokra tla in da bi že z tega, ker je videla mokra tla, morala hoditi bolj previdno. Ne? Ampak je sodišče reklo, ali je to dejstvo, da ni bilo tabel, pa pozor mokra tla, ob dejstvu, da je delavka videla, dovolj prepričljivo za odločitev sodišča prve stopnje, ko je celotno odškodnino dosodilo delavki. Ne? Kar pomeni, da je treba vedno znova, ker ne nazadnje, vsak človek mora delo upravljati na način, da najprej zavaruje svoje zdravje. To je primarno. Ne moraš, tudi če imaš visoke pete, dovolite mi, da rečem, drvet ali hitro teč čez mokro halo. Ne gre, moraš biti primeren. Seveda, pri vsaki nesreči nekdo utrpi škodo. Kaj pa je škoda? Škoda je neka zmanjšanje nekega premoženja, izguba na dobičku, ali pa povzročene telesne ali pa duševne bolečine. In seveda od leta 2004 dalje tudi okrnjen ugled pravne osebe. To se pravi, tudi pravna oseba lahko utrpi nepremoženjsko škodo. Dobro, ni naš namen, da bomo diskutirali o nepremoženjski škodi pravnih oseb, ampak da se vprašamo, kaj zdaj, ko pride do škode, kaj sledi sodišče? Sodišče v vsakem postopku nezgode pri delu išče popolno odškodnino. In kaj je popolna odškodnina? Popolna odškodnina je upoštevajo vse okoliščine, ki so nastale ob tem škodnem dogodku, na način, da vzpostavi takšno stanje, predvsem premoženjsko, zdravstveno to ni mogoče, torej tako premoženjsko stanje, kot je bilo, če ne bi bilo škodnega dogodka. To se pravi, sodišče sloni k temu, da poskuša, če gre za materialno škodo, vso to povrniti, če gre za nematerialno škodo, za nepremoženjsko škodo, da jo oceni in da skozi to denarno odmeno poskuša vzpostaviti stanje, v katerem, kot da tega dogodka ne bi bilo. Tako poznamo dve načeli pri odmerjanju nepremoženjske škode, to je načelo individualizacije in načelo objektivne pogojnosti višine škode. Načelo individualizacije nam preprosto pove, da moramo škodni dogodek vedno obravnavati skozi oči dogodka in ljudi, človeka, ki se mu je nekaj zgodilo. Ko govorimo o nepremoženjski škodi, vam moram jaz povedati, da sem človek, ki tako rekoč nimam pragu bolečine. Če se zbodem v prst, me neizmerno boli. Moj mož ima prag bolečine nekje gor na stropu. To se pravi, mi pa sva tako različni osebi, da ko se govori o škodi, ko se govori o tej individualizaciji, je treba vedno upoštevati človeka, ki ga obravnavaš. To nam seveda vedno pomagajo tudi izvedenci, da pomagajo oceniti to škodo. In pa druga, to je pa ta pogojna objektivizacija škode. Vi se ne boste spomnili, vendar jaz lahko povem, da smo imeli tam v letih 90 pa še prej izjemno velik razkorak med odškodninami in dosojenimi škodami pri delovnih nesrečah in pri navadnih prometnih nesrečah. Polomljena noga v prometni nesreči je bila dvakrat toliko vredna kot zlomljena noga pri nesreči pri delu. Z spremembo sodnega sistema, z uvedbo revizijske stopnje, katere naloga je tudi enotenje teh dosojenih odškodnin, seveda teh razlik ni več. Imamo enotno sodno prakso in to je tudi naloga vseh sodišč, posebej pa vrhovnega, da skozi druge primere, podobne primere, potem objektivno določi primerljivo odškodnino, da ne odstopa. In zakaj je denarna odškodnina za nepremoženjsko škodo? Rekla sem vam telesne bolečine, to kot te nekaj zelo boli. Duševne bolečine, tudi te ljudi trpijo. Zaradi zmanjšanih življenjskih aktivnosti pri nezgodnem dohodku, nisi več toliko po nezgodnem dogodku, ne moreš določenih stvari več delati. Skaženosti, še kako pomembno pri mladih ljudeh, kakšni ostanki nesreče. Pri pravnih osebah razžalitev dobrega imena in časti, potem okrnitev svobode in osebnostne pravice, smrt bližnjega in pa tudi strah. Ne? Vse to govorimo o pravno priznani nepremoženjski škodi. In seveda sodišča si prizadevajo z pomočjo ustreznih izvedencev subjektivizirati dogodek, ugotoviti, kako je ta dogodek vplival na posameznika in seveda, kar ukante me, ker jaz imam veliko, jaz sem grozna, kar se tega tiče, in kako je ta dogodek posegal na posameznika in seveda potem tudi sestaviti neko pošteno odškodnino.
15 minut že govorite, še 5 minut imate.
Dobro, če se vrnem na konkretni primer sodnega dogodka, kjer je tožnik utrpel kompliciran zlom desne koželjnice in podlahnice, potem so bile tle obsežne raztrganine in zmečkanine mehkih delov in potem po zdravljenju je ostala tudi brazgotina na mestu stegna desne noge, od kober so tkivo jemali, je sodišče prve stopnje, da bo tako zelo naokroglo, pa razumljivo, sodniku dosodilo odškodnino v višini 82 povprečnih plač. Ravno funkcija sodišča je, pa kaj je naredil, naj še to povem, utrpel je nezgodo na delovnem mestu, ko je čistil pomični trak, na katerem se je nabiral led in sneg in mu je zaradi slabih vremenskih razmer spodrsnilo in je padal na trak in si je poškodoval roko. Seveda sodišče govori s pomočjo izvedencev medicinske stroke, o trajanju hudih bolečin, o trajanju srednjih bolečin, o trajanju lahkih bolečin, o bolečinah, ki se pojavljajo občasno tudi po zdravljenju in temu primer dosodi odškodnino za trajanje bolečin. Sodišče govori o prestanem strahu, primarnem in sekundarnem. Govorimo o tem, ko se ti zgodi nezgoda, ko ne veš, kaj bo s tvojo roko, jo boš sploh še imel. To je ta primarni strah, neposredno po nesreči, in sekundarni strah, ki je prisoten med zdravljenjem. Ali bo ta roka še gibljiva, ali bo še v svoji funkciji. Ne? In pa seveda tudi o duševnih bolečinah in pa potem o tistih bolečinah, ko pravzaprav se kaže pri naši zmanjšani življenjski aktivnosti. Sodišče je tako, kot je njegova vrhovno sodišče, tako kot njegova poklicanost, to svojo odškodnino znižala za mislim, da 20 povprečnih plač. Govorimo o nevarnih stvareh in nevarni dejavnosti. Vsi vemo, da je delo na višini nevarno delo. Kot primerjavo sem dala delo na 2 tekočih trakih. Prvi je transporter, ki pelje premog iz jame. To se pravi tekoči trak, na katerega odlagajo delavci rudarji premog in ta se pelje do zbirnega mesta ali pa iz jame, odvisno od organizacije delovnega procesa. Nesporno je to nevarna dejavnost, ne? Delo na tem traku. Nesporno. Ampak kljub temu sodišče ni dosodilo popolne odškodnine ali delodajalca polno obremenila. Zakaj? Ker je delodajalec storil vse, kar je bilo potrebno, da bi delavce podučil o delu na tekočem traku, o varnem delu, da so vsi vedeli, da mora priti v primeru kakršne koli nepravilnosti do ustavitve trakov in nobenemu ni na kraj pameti padel, da bi na tekoči trak skočil in umikal stvari, ki so pomenile oviro. Razen temu konkretnemu delavcu, ki je kljub vsem navodilom ravnal v nasprotju z navodili delodajalca. Ker gre v tem primeru za nevarno dejavnost, se seveda in ni šlo za izključno krivdno ravnanje delavca, šlo je pa za njegovo nespoštovanje navodil delodajalca, sta si seveda odškodninsko odgovornost delila. Imamo pa drugo zgodbo delavke na tekočem traku, ko je dodajala neke elemente na hladilnike. O tej sodbi bi lahko veliko govorili, ker je sodišče prve stopnje zavzelo stališče, da delo na tekočem traku pomeni neko urinjeno dinamiko, tempo dela. Tekoči trak, delavka je imela nekaj časa na razpolago, da je opravila svoje enostavne naloge, potem je šel pa ta trak brez njene volje naprej. Torej, urinja tempo dela, ali je ta tempo dela, jaz bi o tem govorila, če bi bila v sodnem postopku, ali je bil ta tempo dela res primeren in ga je delavka zmogla. No, v revizijskem postopku so se delodajalci zagovarjali, da ta tempo držijo že zadnjih 5-6 let, da ni bilo doslej nobene nesreče in da seveda ni bilo nobene potrebe, da bi delavka posegala za svojimi aktivnostmi še potem, ko je trak že stekal in je pri tem utrpela nesrečo. Kakorkoli, ta trak in zato ponavljajočo se enakomerno delovno obremenitvijo pa ni bil obravnavan kot nevarno delo. Tisto transporter je bil, ta pa ne. Ni nujno, vse, kar je na tekočem traku, nevarno delo, to sem hotela pokazati. To je hitri tempo. Ja, tisto, kar me je pa res navdušilo, namreč v življenju pač imam tako, da se ukvarjam z tistimi najbolj zavrženimi rešitvami, je opozorila in navodila, kako ravnati in kako biti poseben skrben do mlajših delavcev, tistih, ki še niso stari 18 let, kako biti skrben do porodnic oziroma nosečih delavk in mater. Moram reči, da to me je navdušilo, zato sem potem potegnila še eno zgodbo ven iz sodišča druge stopnje. Gre za delodajalca, ki je študentu, ta je bil študent, imamo pa tudi dijake, po napotnici odredil delo na nekem določenem stroju, za kar ni bil usposobljen, za kar ni imel ustreznega znanja, pa še kot mlajša oseba bi moral biti pod posebnim nadzorom. Sodišče prve stopnje, ne bodi ga treba, je ugotovilo, da seveda je pretežni meri odgovoren delodajalec in je temu mlademu človeku dosodilo 10% so odgovornosti pri nastali nesreči in s tem tudi ustrezno znižalo odškodnino, ampak je revizijsko sodišče povedalo to svoje, da če gre za mlade ljudi, mlajše od 18 let, če ne gre za zaposlene in neusposobljene ljudi, ustrezno usposobljene za varno delo, da potem delodajalec takega dela ne more in ne sme prepustiti v upravljanje brez nadzora. In to je tudi tista ta zadnja zadeva, se opravičujem, ampak jaz sem delovni čas vpletla v organizacijo dela. Nekako se mi zdi to tako povezano, nisem je zaznala v zdravem delu, ampak bom jaz to se še naučila, tudi podrobneje skozi OIRO. Bi vam pa nekaj rada povedala, da pravzaprav je tudi sestop iz bagerja 1 meter globoko lahko nesreča pri delu izključno v krivdi in odgovornosti delodajalca. Zakaj? Ker je starejšemu delavcu nalagal delo preko polnega delovnega časa, brez njegovega soglasja, izčrpal ga je, ta delavec je bil zmatran, ta delavec ni mogel več varno opravljati tistega dela in je pri sestopu iz bagerja utrujen, kot je bil, klecnil in utrpel nesrečo. Mislim, da v takih primerih ne more biti nobenega dvoma, da je treba delodajalca obremeniti za celotno odškodnino, ki jo je utrpel delavec pri taki nesreči pri delu. In za naprej, za Slovence je značilno, da je zelo močen argument, če mu poveš, kje bo kaj prišparal. Smo pač šparovni ljudje. Tudi v malih družbah. In če bi In če se boste s tem ojro ukvarjali naprej, potem kaže morda spremljati sodno prakso za mikro in mala podjetja, tekočo, ker za nazaj je to, da je ne bomo spucali zlepane, tekočo in v vseh teh primerih analizirati, kaj bi bilo, če bi se ojra upoštevala, kaj bi bilo, kaj bi delodajalec premislil pri sebi, da do takega ravnanja in dogodka ne bi prišlo. Ker ko pride, je žal obema, da smo si na jasnem, delodajalcu in delavcu. Ne? Tako, torej, hvala za vašo potrpežljivost.
No, hvala, gospod Zajšek. Ja. Zdaj, mogoče samo še komentar na te razsodbe, mislim, splošno znano je, pa ne vem, ali je res ali ne v teh primerih, ali delajo tudi ta sodišča prepočasi, ali kako hitro pride zdaj nekdo do odškodnine.
Ja, grozen. Lejte, splošno znano dejstvo je, da delajo prepočasi. Ne? Ampak, veste, tudi na področju odškodninskih oziroma nesreč pri delu, jaz stavim, sploh na področju vseh teh naših medsebojnih razmerij, stavim na mediacijo. Na poskus mirnega reševanja sporov. Zakaj? Še zlasti v mikrodružbah, ne, v družbi 10, lepo prosim, kaj se bomo pravdali, kaj si bomo sodili, do dogodka je prišlo in zdaj se moramo zmeniti, kako naprej, ker za to družbo ni pomembno, kdo bo zmagal na sodišču. Za to družbo je pomembno, kako se boste dogovorili za neko satisfakcijo, še pomembneje pa je, kako boste delali naprej. In če se pravdata, težko delate naprej. Če se dogovorita, je njuna pot naprej še zaciljena. Sicer pa, kar se časa trajanja sodnih postopkov tiče, roko na srce, stvari se izboljšujejo, ampak država dela vse, da bo zdaj to padlo. Ker z najnovejšimi spremembami zakona o pravdnih postopkih, ko se ukinja revizija, ko se, kar je sicer lepo in prav, uvaja glavne obravnave v pritožbenih postopkih, pomeni, da bo pritožbeno sodišče bistveno manj pretočno, kjer bojo nastajali večji zastoji in bomo imeli zaostanke pa na enem drugem koncu, ali bomo imeli pa toliko več ustavnih sporov. Tako da, veste, jaz pravim zdravo pamet v roke, dajmo se zmeniti, ker se da. Ne? In to so zadeve, kjer se lahko dogovarjamo, ker imamo prosto pot.
Najlepša hvala, gospod Toš Zajšek. Hvala lepa.
Ni na čem.
Vabim k besedi gospoda Marjosa Karalambusa, prihaja iz družbe MIAC Storitve DO, govoril bo v angleškem jeziku in sicer o dobri praksi iz tujine in o uvedbi aplikacij OIRE orodij na Cipru.
Hello, I would like to start first thanking you for this invitation and have this opportunity to exchange our initiatives in order to promote OIRA in Cyprus, and I will be at your disposal for any questions and any queries you have at the end of the presentation. I will start with the existing tools online at the moment in Cyprus, and then the new tools that are coming are in the process to be developed. I'm going to speak a bit about the implementation of these tools, and then the potential role that the Labour Inspectorate has in this promotion of the tools, and then some words about the planning, future developments, and monitoring statistics. At the moment, there are actually five OIRA tools that are online. The one for the hairdressers, which was the first one produced, developed, and went online in 2011. Actually, that was the first OIRA tool throughout Europe, because maybe you should know, maybe you know by now that Cyprus was the first who started developing OIRA tools. And why hairdressers? Because that was one of the sectors that we identified through surveys and questionnaires that they anticipated a lot of problems. More than 85% of the people working in this sector, they were anticipating a lot of problems with regard to musculoskeletal disorders and dermatitis. So it was one sector that needed to pay attention from the Department of Labor inspector. I need to say now that before I used to work in the Department of Labor inspection, and that's why I was involved with the development of these tools. But now I work as a consultant on health and safety issues, and I try to look the things from the other side now, from the side of the SMEs, from the side of the micro, small enterprises, and see the problems they are anticipating in working in these tools. And we are see in the next slides how we are planning to promote and monitor the use of the tools. And then we have the office work, especially tailor-made for the public sector. This went online on the 2012. 2014, we had the butcheries and the catering services. And finally, in 2015 and early 2016, we managed to develop an OIRA tool for the school establishments, because this is one of sector, again, with a lot of problems. The new tools that they are about to be developed is they have to do with the small tourist lodgings. As you know, Cyprus is a tourist destination. Therefore, there are a lot of small tourist lodgings in place, and we have to look at the health and safety issues as well. The restaurants and coffee shops, car repair and painting garages, and small commercial shops. When we develop the tool, then we present the tool to the members of the board of the Hairdressers Association, of the board, because we wanted to start from the head. So everybody, everywhere, every person in the board to be aware of this tool and the benefits of using this tool. And then we present the tool during seminars organized locally in all districts to all members of the Hairdressers Association. And we ask for these people for pilot testing to see whether this tool is convenient and easy to use, that serve their needs, because this is the major issue, to serve their needs. And then the language that we use is understandable. It's not the language coming out from the legislation, but the everyday language that they are using and understand. And also that to show that the preparation of this risk assessment does not take too much time. When we tested it, we found out, we ended up actually, that it will not take more than 3 hours to do your own risk assessment tool, going through this tool. And the benefit of this tool is that you can stop any time you want when you don't have the time to go towards the end, and you come back and continue from the stage you left it there. So can you see how many ways they were given through this tool? Because it's very important. Everybody has in his mind a lot of things. All the managers, sometimes they have some emergency calls and they have to deal with emergency issues. Okay, you stop it there, and then when you have the time, you come back again to the tool. And this is one of the major issues. It's not something you start and you have to finish on the same time, on the same day. And you go slowly. And once you find troubles, once you find issues that you need to discuss it with your employees. There are questionnaires that you can take advantage of those and have a meeting with your representatives there, safety representatives, discuss the whole issue, and then come back to the tool and answer the proper answer for the question. The Hairdressers Association also, they had inside inspectors. In other words, they had inspectors visiting saloons to check whether they apply all the regulations concerning hairdressers. And we took this advantage to incorporate also this kind of approach with the OIRA tool. So these people, when they receive our training, they were in a position, by visiting a hairdresser salon, to provide assistance to the manager at this salon with regard to how to implement, how to go through the risk assessment tool. Also, we prepare a lot of, we publicize relevant articles in the Cyprus Hairdressers Association magazine. They issue a magazine on every 3 months, so we have a good opportunity to promote in every aspect the OIRA tool. And okay, this is for the hairdressers. With regard to the public sector, the Department of Labor Inspection, with the support of and help of the Union of the Civil Servants, organized seminars for dissemination of the tool. And I must say here that the Union of the Civil Servants is one of the strongest unions in Cyprus. Therefore, everyone was expecting that this one will move forward faster than any other sector, but unfortunately, the statistics show that this is not the case. And the competent authority has to look at it and find out why didn't prove that implement. So, about the butcheries, the Department of Labor Inspection, with the support of EU OSHA and the help of the Butchers Association, organized seminar for the dissemination of the tool. Catering services, the EU OSHA and the help also now we put on board the Enterprise Europe Network to organize training seminars for the dissemination of the tool. And having the Enterprise Europe Network on board, we facilitate training on the spot. And as you can see in the slide, everyone was sitting in front of a laptop. So when we were providing the training, they were playing as well with it. And then realize what we were trying to say verbally, now they could confirm that that was the case, and that it is easy to be, the language use is okay, the time taken is not too much, you can stop and then you can start from the point you left it back. So that was the case. And that's why probably the statistics on this sector are the best statistics that we have. Now, with the school establishments, now the department, with the support of the Ministry of Education and Culture, will organize seminars for pilot testing of OIRA for the school establishments, because now we are still in the pilot testing phase, and they are going to provide teachers, other personnel, to as well, again, be trained in front of a laptop to present them exactly how the tool operates, and we expect that once we put it online, they will be in a position to work the tool and be benefited by that. Now, the potential role of the competent authority, the Labor Inspectorate. The Inspectorate ensures that all the social partners become aware and involved in the development process from the very beginning. Manage to provide simple information, easy to transfer to a broader group of users. That's why in the pilot testing we used to check and test this thing, because it was a very key issue to be simple information. Provide the users with specific relevant information as well as a guidance on which base decision. Then manage to help companies implement the legal requirements or risk assessment. And now taking this advantage on legal requirement, besides the political act, the civil act in Cyprus, the law is very strict with regard the penal. When you go in front of the penal court, is very, very strict. For every contravention, the law says up to 80,000 euros, or 4 years in jail, or both together, the consecutive cases. So it is very important. And in our law, the employer goes as guilty, and he has to prove that he has done all the necessary measures in order to avoid accidents, ill health, and keeps a good workplace, a good standard in his workplace. Okay. Therefore, with this, with the OIRA tool, we provide, and also here in Slovenia, in the OIRA tool, you will find also the article, the specific article that oblige you to go through and do this and take these measures. It's not just we suggest and we propose. Whatever is in the OIRA tool comes out from the legislation. And manage to reach the enterprises with the lowest implementation rate of risk assessment, because small enterprises have they do not have the resources. They do not have the infrastructure. They do not have the know-how. So they have to seek for help, for some consultants. They have to pay. So they prioritize that they need to pay in some other sectors, in some other issues, rather than in health and safety. Therefore, with this OIRA tool, which is free of charge, online, you can go in this, you can visit this web page at any time of your own time. That was a very good opportunity. And then in 2014 and 15, the inspectorate conducted inspection campaigns, especially on these sectors, so to ascertain whether they have prepared a written risk assessment and to what extent they have used OIRA tool during the preparation of the risk assessments. Trust me, the results were very disappointing, but now we are not sure whether this is due to negligence or due to the crisis, because, as you know, in Cyprus we anticipated and still we are under this situation, a very, very serious crisis, and a lot of businesses forced to shut down because they couldn't have the resources to anticipate the problems created from the crisis. The DLI also has prepared a short questionnaire that was used by the labor inspectors during the campaign as well as an instruction document given to the employees to inform them about these things in order as well from their side. They are members of the safety committees and everything, so they can push in order to all together, hand by hand, to proceed with the use of the OIRA tools. And future inspection campaigns for the sectors that OIRA tool has and will be developed. That means for the OIRA tools that we have already mentioned, also inspection campaigns will be planned there to see and secure that also these sectors are in line with the preparation of risk assessment. So now the planning. It is obvious that the problem of a low-level risk assessment implementation in SMEs will not get smaller without some time of intervention, whatever we do. Why? There are no signs that the enforcement activities will be strengthened in the near future. We see from the budgets that every year there are less and less money allocated to the inspectorates. That means they have to cut as well or to replan their approaches. That means they will not have the time to do these kind of interventions. Therefore, we have to look and see and find out what we need to do to support this movement towards OIRA tool. The impact from other initiatives aimed at improving the level of risk assessment implementation, such as guides and checklists, we have to look at it, if there is any impact or if there is, how to take advantage of this impact. All economic activities where OIRA tool was and all will be developed to be included, as we said it before, in the annual inspection program of the Department of Labour Inspection. Organizations that provide training to safety officers will be asked to include information and training about OIRA to their program's participants. I am one of these organizations now that I provide training to safety officers, and I have already incorporated OIRA program in my lectures, and I inform these people about the benefits of this OIRA. Sometimes maybe I have people from other sectors, not the specific sectors, but as Natasha mentioned in her presentation, there are a lot of horizontal issues that we can take advantage of those, like psychosocial, like health problems, like organizational issues in the workplace. So even if it is not tailor-made to the specific sector, people that getting aware of this tool, they can be benefited as well, because there is so much information in this tool, free of charge, imagine, and with a press of a button. And reference to OIRA tool during all training programs for safety committee members. This one is as well, because there are programs continuously for safety committee members. So these people, they are going to be aware of this tool in order as well from their part to push and act in such a way to make their employer to start dealing with this issue. Now, what are the future developments? Development of promotion strategy for each single tool along with the OIRA promotion materials. Many of the issues here that I'm going to say already covered by Lorenzo before, because we are in a close cooperation with the European agency how to promote the OIRA tools. As we said, we need to find some other interventions. Okay? So the OIRA promotion strategies along with the OIRA promotion materials will be developed using as a basis these OIRA promotion supporting documents produced by the European agency, and the national OIRA partners are available on the OIRA websites. We're going to see what others are using, other countries, what they are doing about certain things, and we are going to take it on board. We have to involve the sector as social partners, stakeholders, and associates from the very, very beginning to make sure that they are engaged throughout the implementation process. Like now, next week, we are going to have a meeting with all these representatives for the sectors I mentioned before that we are going to develop, and we are going to ask for them. Who are the two people that they are going to be appointed to sit with me in parallel, and I have them as advisors when I prepare this tool? So engagement from the very beginning. And then proposal, the OIRA tool to contain the top occupational risks in the sector, because this makes it possible to users to see clearly the priority risks in their company in addition to other risks. In this way, the OIRA tool will give users a good focus and put them in the position to find successful solution to these risks, in particular small enterprises, less than 10 people. One, the employer, his wife, and his son, they are the 33% of the business. So what are the chances for these people as well to be affected by these risks? Those are the top risks in your business, in your sector. So what are you doing to take into consideration? What are you doing to anticipate these problems? The EOSHA will prepare banners to be used by the sector as social partners for their website, so easily there, a banner, you just press it and you have all the information, so easily. And then preparation of articles to be published in media channels specific to each sector to raise awareness of the tool among its target and end users. Preparation of flyers of each of the OIRA tools, which will include general information on the benefits of the tools, together with instructions on the use of the tools to be distributed to all end users. Training of the OIRA tools to specific individuals who will be involved in promoting awareness of the OIRA tools as identified by each social partners. So those people that they are going to be appointed to work with me, at the end of the day, they will be involved in the promotion awareness, because these people will be familiar with all the benefits from the tool, and they are going to answer to the worries of their colleagues, because now they have already went through the process, they know exactly what's going on, and they will be able to answer every question for these people. And those individuals who receive the above to be key participants in promotion seminars, to be organized by the social partners, to speak, to exchange ideas, and then the participation of individuals will provide added value in promoting the OIRA tools, as they will be able to address any concerns or queries which may be raised by the end users. To organize workshops by stakeholders or social partners for the end users who have expressed an interest in using the OIRA tools. Through the seminars after the presentation, we are going to ask how many of you want to deal with these things. So I'm going to organize workshops. Come all of you on board in front of a laptop and sit down with me, and we go through. And all the feedback from the workshop, and prepare a summary of all these relevant findings to be shared with the stakeholders for distribution to end users. So this is the amount, this is the case, these are the feedback from your colleagues, so be aware of it. The social partners, associations, key performance, they have to set key indicators related to the goals in order to evaluate the results and readjust their strategy if we are necessary. Of course, we have to monitor, we have to set targets, otherwise we won't be able to know whether we succeeded or not. And then we have to promote as well the good practices. Someone said we cannot change the wind, but we can adjust the sails. So we have to monitor. We have to set up a mechanism to record the progress toward achieving the targets. Reporting at prescribed time intervals, or when necessary in numbers if possible, because this is the only thing that gives us clear idea. To compare sectors, enterprise conformity levels, to evaluate the statistics and conclude on the trends. No rule exists to monitor. What to monitor? Definitely, but the targets. And then finally, the statistics. We have to look at the statistics. They give us a picture. When we have a picture, we have the possibility to comment. It's a good picture, it's a nice picture, it's a positive thing, it's a negative thing we have to do. And then there is a good, there are, in the UEJC, they provide us with a very good statistics. They give us exactly what indexes that we need to have in mind. Let's say top assessments that at least 70% of the questions have been answered, and at least 70% in the action plan have taken into consideration. From the survey response, now we see that at least for those 50% of the people that they use the tool and they have the willingness to respond to this answer, whether the OIRA tools met your need, they answer yes. All of them, all 50%, they reply yes, OIRA tool met our needs. And then the next question, will you suggest, will you propose to your colleagues, other colleagues, to go through the OIRA tool? All of them, again, all 50% answer yes. This is a very good indication. Therefore, we have to look to the other 50% who didn't respond to these questions and find out the reasons why, and then to help them if there are negative issues, to find out about this and see how to handle it. Vala.
So, Mr. Charalambous, since we don't have the opportunity to talk to you every day, I will also ask the public whether they have any questions. Imate mogoče kakšno vprašanje za gospoda Charalambousa? Otherwise, I have just one proposal. You said that you tend to show and speak about the two sides of the coin. So briefly, what is the side of the entrepreneurs and what is the side of the workers?
Okay. If I hold now a €2 coin and I ask you to describe what you are looking at, all of you are going to say the same thing. And you are the business people, the managers. But I am going to say a different thing because I look at it from other angle and I describe. We are talking about the same thing, but both of us cannot communicate. We describe another thing, you describe another thing. At this moment, you cannot get into my shoes and see exactly what I'm seeing. Therefore, I need to go into your shoes. And now that I'm working on the other side, not on the inspectorate, as a consultant of the micro, small, and small enterprises and other enterprises, now I see their needs as well. And I know there is willingness for people to do things because they start realizing the importance of being safe and being healthy in their workplace. But they have no resources. They have no infrastructure to do so. Therefore, we have to find a way to support those enterprises through projects in order to facilitate them to approach the coin from the same angle as the competent authority.
Thank you.